Okay, anything better on your side?
All right. I should be coming in right now.
Okay. And I just spun. Okay, but the time that I got here was like a 56.1. So I think we can definitely
Was this
get a bit of time.
on? Let me
Soft. This
on
was
softs.
soft.
Okay.
Yeah. On the mediums, I think it's going to be about 1.5 seconds slower, but in general, I think this is going into like, I would say in time trial, this would go into low 55s with some practice. With this
Okay.
car, of course, I mean, uh, the points, I mean, okay, I'm going to mention all of that in the lesson, but as much as you can jump over the curbs, that can be good, but bad at the same time. So that's why I said like with like stable cars, you can jump over the curbs and it's gonna be okay most of the time. Like 90% of the time, you don't have to worry about it. But with this car, I think in the race, if that's like 1 hour long, I wouldn't risk it that much because you can jump off in a bad way and like you're gonna lose like 10-15 seconds just trying to recover. I
You lose
mean, what I
more
do
than you
here,
gain. Yeah.
yeah, you're basically not a good idea, really, to risk it every single time. How I do this, I'll just show you a kind of a couple of laps on the track. Usually that's one lap, only a couple of minutes of kind of introduction. You can go into spectating mode. I don't know if you're already there.
I'm
Probably
already
are.
there.
Yeah, okay. Don't have to explain it then. Just make sure that you can see all of my inputs, like how much am I braking, where am I braking. Actually, I'm gonna tell you where I brake, or at least try to brake. And I think that's the most important part. Like the braking, you will see that the braking is pretty much 90% of all of the work. Like steering and the throttles are kind of okay, but braking is 90% of everything.
Okay.
Why I say that? Because the amount of brake that you put in, it's always going to be resulting either in a crash or you're going to get like half a second up on your previous best time. So I would like to start with how this car works. You might have probably driven it a lot, I guess, if you're in a league. But in general, it's very loose when you're trying to hit the brakes and turn at the same time,
Yes.
especially if you're facing a section that is something like this, when it's a downhill or uphill section or pretty much anything that you go to. So how to eventually stop that? So I do have a couple of pointers. So basically, whenever I'm facing a corner, I always like to divide it in a couple of segments. So the first one would be like a 100-meter mark. The second one would be the 50-meter or something that you find on the track. Another one would be like the breaking point or an end. So the 50 should be, I think, at this point 50 or a little bit later, that's your breaking point. But then as you get to the curb and so on and so forth, this is where I get a lot of my information. So the 50 or a little bit later, that's the braking zone. The curb on the right is where I release the brakes or add on a bit of power. The steering comes in until, let's say, it doesn't come until, let's say, the next curb and so on. But let's begin. So the 50-meter, or somewhere around here, I would say, is your braking point. But it also matters a lot how you position the car. So it's not the same if you enter the corner facing that way, or you're just completely straight and up and you're basically braking the straight line. So those are two different things. Or in general, where I see a lot of people where they lose a lot of time and it's mostly inconsistent. Is that you came in at this point, I say, okay, this is your braking point, but braking in this way and braking in this way, it's not the same. So I always try to position the car in a way that it's facing in the straight line. So let's say like this. I'm reaching the 50, so I'm reaching actually the 100. I'm starting to turn in a little bit, something like 5 degrees, and then I go 50 and I hit the brakes. But you see the line now, it's mostly straight up. And
Okay.
another point here is that this is going to try to pull you in. So if the front tires reach out the curb is going to try to catch you. Like it will give you more grip than you actually need. or it will become slippery in a way if you touch the grass or something like that. So another point, going to literally the first point that I made, I like to dissect every single section or split them into smaller segments. And this is your second one. And when you hit a portion of the track that is like that, I like to give it a bit of a power when I'm still braking. This will prevent the car from sliding. So you're actually giving it a bit of a touch from the back, because this is a real rear-wheel drive car. And if the rear is loose, something is bad, something is moving. But if you give it a little bit of power, the back wheels will start spinning once again, actually rotating in your direction, and it's just gonna keep the car straight up, and you don't have to worry about losing it at that point. It might be a little bit slower, but it's way more consistent. And then it's mostly about, you know, letting it go, waiting until you get on the power. I'm just gonna show you one, let's see. But here, going in, it's like a little lift with this car. Every time you go in, it's a little lift, and you can see once I completely get off the throttle, the car starts sliding. You see this? So in general, what I see with a lot of people that they do, they like to hold on to the power like this. And you see what happens? A lot of understeer. So if you don't do that, for example, let's say this one, going in. If you start putting the power up too soon, you might go a little bit too wide, because the car is always pushing. You're always pushing the car in that direction. But if you do it too much, like in this example, it can lead to excessive oversteer, or the back got a little bit too loose. So that's why I said in that corner, you can put in a little bit of power, and it's going to stabilize that back end before you lose it. And just going to make your life a lot easier. And once again, going in, if I put in a little bit of power, it's going to stabilize it, but it's going to make myself go very, very wide. So always, when you're facing a corner like that, if you getting on the curb and you're already the high speed, without the potential risk of losing it, if you got enough road and etc., we're going to go through every single corner, don't worry, we got a whole hour. But you might want to get it a little bit of power to stabilize it. A little means about 10-15%, maybe up to 20. So when something like this happens, like you go in, the back got loose, you want to stabilize it a little bit with some power. But if it's too much, if it's about 30, 40, 50%, it will cause unwanted understeer. So the car won't rotate, it will basically understeer into every single corner, and you're just pretty much going to lose it. So if you want to watch this, you see how the car stabilized through the corner, because I didn't lift off completely. But here I want to lift, I want that rotation now. And you can see how nicely, without even touching the brakes, how nicely it rotates through the turn. Here going in, a little tap on the brakes, nothing much, you can downshift or you don't have to. But here, once again, lift off, go. And you can see how much track that I got there. So there was actually better to, you know, push myself a little bit faster so I can just use all of that track.
Okay.
But here, I have to be careful because it's going to pull me out because it's a downhill section. And okay, this is demonstration purposes, I guess. But brake straight, don't downshift too early, and now downshift, only at the curb. Because if you do it too early, then once again you will lose the car. And that's why I say with this car, really try to downshift as late as you possibly can. Going in, you'll see why. You see here, the car is getting sideways, but it's not getting that sideways because I delayed my downshifts. If I did it too early, then the back would get loose, I would start sliding, and then you lose a lot of time just because of that slide.
Okay. And I do that, so that should help right there.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but I already kind of, after, I don't know how many people that I coached, but I think it's more than 100 or even more, who knows. But in general, I found myself, okay, if you got a gap that is about 2 to 3, 4 seconds, then okay, you're probably doing those mistakes. If you're like a second, that's about it. Or maybe it's something different. So I can probably see without even looking what's the potential issue, and especially with the cars like this, because this is very very hard car to drive. But of course, there are always some specific points. Always, like there's always some specific points that we can address. So, I mean, so far, if you got any questions,
not at this moment. I mean, everything you touched is something that I'm doing wrong.
okay, okay. All right. I mean, my first part of, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes is done, so you can jump onto the track. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to watch you. I'm not going to comment for the first 5 to 10 minutes, let's say 5 minutes, like 2 to 3 laps, and then I'm just going to show you, where we can gain that advantage.
All right. You want me to jump on softs as well?
Yeah. You can jump onto the soft, yeah.
Yeah, you see, like right there, I downshifted too early.
Yeah, that's what later I would point out, but I can see a couple of things already, like in that section, but until you do let's say a 2 to 3 laps, it's hard to say something. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, turn 1 is the bane of my existence. This is where...
This is where you mostly lose it, I guess, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was only because you told me to point it first before I hit the brakes. Normally, I would lose it there.
Okay, that's some progress, and let's say, what is it, 15 minutes? So we're okay. Okay.
See, I keep downshifting too early. I'll be honest, I'm scared of that turn. Because of that bump in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, but you can delay the inputs and you can start trail braking a little bit later. Maybe I can show you that point. I mean, it's... Oh, okay. We can do one more lap after this one. It doesn't have to be... Don't focus too much. Like, drive like you normally would. And try to kind of...
Alright.
So is the McLaren wheel GTDD Pro and what pedals?
Just the CSLs, the base. Okay. With the load cell.
Okay, with the load cell, then it's...
And then
Actually, a
I've
lot
got
better.
some, yeah, and then I've got a mod on the gas where I put some actuators on there so it's stiffer. My gas pedal's stiffer.
Okay, but I mean, I tried a lot of those modifications, but in the end, it was mostly how I felt it. It was mostly about me. So for some, mods are gonna be great. For me, they're gonna be kind of okayish, but not really worth the money. I don't know. It's difficult to explain like that. Even the load cells. I mean, some people can be quick without a load cell. Maybe even quicker than me at this point because how the game works. Okay. And also we can adjust the gearing a little bit.
Okay.
Easy. Yeah. I mean, you can jump into the spectating mode. I'm gonna show you what I think it's the problem. It's mostly
Alright.
the same things. Okay, I'm gonna stop right here. So, let me know when you can see me.
Alright, I'm here.
Okay, so I mentioned like you have to point out the car a little bit better, so it's mostly becoming a straight line. But I will go back to the basics of how each turn has to be executed in a sense. So some turns are okay if you break in the straight line. Some are absolutely fine with that. But in some turns, you will have to brake and turn at the same time. So this is something in between, not exactly braking and turning, not really, not really hitting the braking point, braking the straight line and getting off the brakes, but something in between. So going for the first one, I can see that you have a lot of room left that you might use. I'm thinking, okay, you're probably braking a little bit too early. So try braking a little bit later than you normally would, and don't hit the power until right about this point.
Okay.
So you will brake for the first 25 meters. I don't know exactly what's that in feet or yards or anything like that. That's the gap. Yeah. That's the gap in general. And the reason for that is because I think you're braking too much, and then when you get to this point, the car is already too slow. And then the rest of this corner really suffers. Like
Okay.
you're slower in the middle of the turn, and on the way out it's kind of okay. I wouldn't change that much. But just make sure when you hit this point, it's fifth. Like stay in fifth. Don't try to downshift. And only when you get up to here, off the curb, then go into fourth. So you just don't want to unsettle the car that much. So it's a bit of braking, and then when you see the car is losing, like you're losing the back end, then it's a bit of power. Nothing too much. And then you stay. Now you downshift, go in, you're braking even more a little bit. But now you can actually get off the throttle. So when you get off the curbs, it's fine. It's absolutely fine to get off the throttle. And then it's going up to this point. You're downshifting into third. You can tap the brakes a little bit if it's too much. You can downshift into second. But the most important part here is I always seen that. I mean, I've been watching you for like 2 laps, but I've seen it in both of the laps or even 3 laps that you've done. You're here in second, and then you're waiting until the car straightens up, and then you hit the power fully. But if the car is on the curb, I'm gonna go back. If the car is on the curb, you have to stabilize it a little bit. That means putting in about 15-20% of the throttle. And then you're upshifting into third, which at one point it will kind of save you an upshift. So each upshift takes a bit of time. Nothing more than with, let's say, 20, 30, 50 thousandths of a second, even a tenth with some cars, with some road cars, or even they can take a little bit more time with some road cars. But going back to Group 3, it can take, let's say, 50 thousandths of a second. So if you get on the power in second and you fully kind of use that second gear, you kind of rev it up until the end, and then you upshift in the third, you lost about, let's say, 30 to 40 thousandths. Because the acceleration was not that much worse in third than it was in second. Plus, you get yourself an upshift, that's one thing. But the other thing is that the car is going to behave much smoother. Like, you don't really have to worry about if the tires are going to slip, you're going to lose the back end, all sorts of things. It just becomes more stable. So in a sense, getting in here in second, it's worse than getting out in third. In a lot of ways. I think the second might be quicker, but it's going to prevent you to get on the power fully. Like, I can show you in one turn. So even here. Like third, keep it in third and here. You see, stabilizing it in third. I don't want to go down in second. Okay. But what if I'm in third? See this? I'm revving up the car. Let's say. Sorry, I think the better example would be, that might be fourth gear, by the way. Here. If I got a little bit wider on that point, I might be actually losing the car. But in third, I would stop a lot of that understeer, I would get more traction, and in the end I would get better acceleration because it's just a downhill section, and you don't really have to worry about if the car is going to slide or not, because it's like way better. And once again here, the other parts were okay, I wouldn't change them that much, but this one. So I mentioned, like, okay, some turns you have to brake in the straight line, some you have to like turn and brake. Mm-hmm. But here, it's actually pointing out the car in the direction you were headed, something like this. Not exactly there, because this is way too early, but we'll position it like that, and then you're braking straight until right about here. And then you're slowly going into this trail braking zone, like this. Still on the brakes, let go, get on the curb, third, flat out. Because I've seen that you get on the brakes, you get off the brakes, you start turning. So yes. The weight transition isn't really the best at that point, because when you get off the brakes, it's like, I don't know, you're just going on the highway, and all of a sudden you're on the brakes, you're heavily braking, and it's like getting loose once again. It's like you want to fly away. I don't know the feeling, but I'm trying to describe the feeling, but it's difficult. So the car is braking, it's putting all of its weight to the front, and then when you get off the brakes, it kind of balances itself out, like it's in kind of 50%, it's straightened up. And then when you start turning, it's like completely out of balance. But what trail braking does is you brake, the nose goes down, the back of the car goes up. That's why I said you need to put a bit of power to stabilize it. And in general, when you get into the turn, it kind of bites in, and the weight transition is much, much better. So you can bite into the turn, the front tires will kind of grip in. But if you do something or kind of the opposite, like you're biting in the first part of the corner, and then it kind of evens itself out, and you want to turn, the car is not going to bite in the same way. So you're just not going to get the same amount of grip, because it's just not how it works. Like the weight of the car is all around the place. But in general, that's what can happen here. But here you actually want to stabilize it. But yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
And that what you just explained, I think it's where I'm having this biggest problem, is that weight shift from hard braking, the weight's on the front, everything's biting, and then when I let off and hit the gas, the front lifts, and then I've got no There's no grip in the
Yeah.
front.
No, nothing, I guess.
So by
Okay.
giving it that 10% throttle, you actually sit the back of the car back down and make sure that it stays more balanced. That's
Exactly, but don't do it
Okay.
too early. So if you try to
Okay.
do it early, like I'm saying here, so you're just gonna prolong your braking distance, nothing more, because this is straight line. It's nothing happening here. Okay, the front is biting into the corner, but there is no corner in sight. Like literally, you're going straight up. But only when you start going into the turn, you can go into, let's say, third, second. Don't try to downshift too quickly. You're on the brakes a little bit, and then you downshift. And when you downshift, you will experience a bit of that rotation from the back end because it's biting. The back is in air more than it's used to, and it's not spinning. Like the tires are not spinning. So let's say the back of the car wants to keep on going, and it wants to end up in that barrier right there on the right hand side. So it's kind of pulling you out. And what can save you in this situation is like putting a bit of power, so you're getting that force onto the left side. So it's not pulling you on the right side anymore. It's kind of pointing you out in, let's say, the middle, because the force is on the opposite sides. You're basically in the straight up, and the fronts will turn the car. So what I do here is try it for the first part of the corner. Position the car as best as you can, and it all starts here. Wait a second. So if you don't do this part, okay, then the weight is just going to be off. You can watch this kind of dark mark, and then let's see how this line becomes straight up. You need to follow that. So if it's like this, if you're pointing out the corner like this and you want to brake while still turning, you will experience that the back is going to get loose and you will lose control. So whenever you do this, something like this, off the curb, wait a bit, and here you brake. I don't have an exact point where I would brake. I just wait until I pass the curb and then I hit it. And just make sure you hit it in that straight line. And once again, you got that board on the right. And this is where you slowly start turning. So it's kind of okay with this car. With the GTR, you would have to like slam it in. But just as I explained it, the back will get loose. You're carrying a lot of that speed, a lot of that weight wants to go and continue moving forward, but you want it to move left. So you have to do a very, very easy transition. And you're still in, let's say, second or even third at that point. But now it's about first, getting off, and then you want to point it out a little bit, upshifting into second, and now you can put the power down. Because in second, everything becomes easier.
okay.
So I can show you like a couple of times here. But I would really like to point out this whole section. And I think this is why you're going wide. Look at my inputs. What I just did there. I completely got off the throttle. So another point is that this car has a lot of downforce. So if you don't fully use that downforce, you will eventually lose the whole car. Which means if you don't... I don't have the handbrake mapped on this thing, and it's just a nightmare. It should be, but I decided to play with the formula cars, and I needed that boost, so I need to change it. Never mind. Okay, so you're going up to this point.
Okay.
And okay, what happens? It's the same thing. Like, watch my inputs here. Like, you can see how little am I turning. If you start turning in too quickly, so the car will loose up the front. So you will lose a lot of that grip on the front. And if you start kind of pointing it out to the middle, it's no good because you just blew away, let's say, a portion of your traction mid-corner. Like, you gave it a little bit too much, the weight is all around the place, and it's really not possible for you to kind of, ease it up and make the corner safely. So a little bit of steering is just about enough. But you can brake here because the car has a lot of downforce. So it's kind of planted. It's not going to go anywhere. But just make sure that you don't downshift too quickly because you need that rotation for the apex, for this point. So like it's fourth, it's going to be like third, And then you can still press the brakes a little bit, but don't try to accelerate too quickly. You want to use full potential of that curb. Like even here, you see this? It's rotating, I'm waiting, and then when I see the end of the curb, I go.
Okay.
And I haven't done too much of braking, throttle, nothing. Nothing. I just absolutely did nothing. Maybe I was turning a bit, but that's pretty much about it. Here, a 50, I think you can flat it out if you get a good point. But okay, before the 100, you brake. And you can see how I'm using that first. I'm using that for rotation. I don't even need it, but I'm using it just when I turn, I downshift into first. But let's go for one lap. Maybe it's going to be easier for you to understand what I'm talking about when I actually do it. So, going in, we're going to move slightly. You see how it started rotating?
Yes.
Maybe this was too much for me. I should have given it, let's say, 15-20% and not 10. But that's what happens in this track. Full off, tap on the brakes a little bit, nothing too much. Let the car some space. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Go. Easy here. Like you see the inputs of the steering wheel. They are not sharp. I'm not doing anything in a kind of a sharp way. So everything is smooth. Like I'm not gonna do something like this. Maybe if I need to recover the car, but now it's like easy. Second, you're going off. Go in. Look at the straight line now. Got it. Because I started putting a bit, let's say 15-20% of the power, I was able to pull it out. Yeah. Okay, even me at this point, I need to kind of counter steer it sometimes. But here, once again, easy. If you don't feel right, if you just don't feel like, okay, I can take this corner much faster, don't do it.
Okay.
Like really take it easy. But the most important part of everything here is like easy in the easy in the high speed sections. Go in. First just for rotation. I'll go in once again. There's going to be about 57 at the best. I still wanted to go wider, but it's third. You can watch the inputs now. They're very soft. I'm not doing anything fast. Okay. Now watch the brake and turn part. You see how nicely it gets in there.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do a lot of work with my wheel. Not even here. Ah, this was slow. But it was stable. At least something, I guess. Yeah. I'll try to do this flat out. Oh yeah, it's possible. And if you want to have a good lap here, stay on the right.
Okay.
And this is, let's say, a 56.4. But once again, just on this corner. Look at the movements of the hands. You see how much am I turning?
Yeah.
Almost nothing initially.
Yeah, and it's so smooth because yeah, my inputs are too erratic to say.
Okay. But I mean, yeah, that's. I think that's also the part of the problem because if you're transferring the weight, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, now I made a mistake.
No, that's all right.
Now I went off. You don't want to do something like that, especially here.
No, and as you were saying, it's like I was saying, my inputs are too erratic, but I think it's because of that, because of the weight transfer that I'm not controlling the weight transfer, so it makes me have sharper inputs trying to save it on every corner.
Yeah, but well, I wouldn't call it everyone, but in general, it's all about the braking and how you position the car before the turn, and that really determines how you're gonna move the car mid-turn or even later, or it's just gonna compromise your exit speed or anything else. So the entry point and how you get in the corner is like the part that that's the most important part of every single corner. So in general, I would be very cautious on how you, let's say, position it and in which way you brake. Like I've explained, like in some turns, a bit of steering and then you hit the brakes. In some it's like straight up and then you transition into trail braking, but in some it's almost immediately, like you're going in, something like this. So you want to rotate the car in that way. That's why I'm tapping the brakes while I'm turning in some of the S's, because I turn the car, I get off the throttle, and then I tap the brakes to get more on the back end, because I would like the front would bite and it will get the back of the car loose, and you're just basically rotating it more than it should be. But it's it's fast, so I guess that's what you need to do, become really fast. But I mean, if you would like to do a couple of laps, or if you got some questions for me, I can answer that for you.
Yeah, there you go. This coming up, this hairpin. You have that bump right in the middle that makes the 911. That makes this car, makes the back end come out if you hit the grass too far. To avoid, that becoming a problem, do I just give it that little, that 15% of throttle to balance it better?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
So if you hit something on the track, I normally put in a bit of power to stabilize it, because it's a bump. It's going to lift you, and then it's going to put you down. But if you hit the brakes, you're basically kind of on, like you're driving on ice.
Yeah.
Something like that happens. You're losing a lot of that surface where it's all about traction. Like on ice, it's better to keep it rolling. It's better to put it a bit of power, because you can actually turn the wheel, or you can actually do something. But if you hit the brakes, you're just a passenger. You cannot do much. Okay. I mean, something like that is happening, but a very, very lower scale, if I want to put it like that.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because on this corner, that's what I do. Like, when I hit that bump, I'll get a lot of oversteer.
Uh-huh, okay.
And which is pretty much the same thing as in every other corner. When I'm starting to oversteer, give it a little bit of throttle to settle the back, to shift the weight a little bit towards the back and settle it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, it's different in every kind of corner. Not every corner is going to be the same, but it depends also the situation. I cannot like say this is going to be working like 100% of the times. Like 95% is going to be okay, but the 5, then you'll have to work it out. Okay.
All right. So I think as far as driving, I mean, now I just got to put all of this. I just got to start practicing all of this and getting better at it. Questions. Okay. Just general questions, I guess, about this race coming up. It's a 1-hour race. Right now, my strategy is mediums, pretty much doing like 15 mediums, 15 It's a 1 hour race. I'm sorry. So I'll do
No,
about
you said.
22 minutes, 23 minutes on mediums, then come in another 23 minutes on mediums, and then finish off on softs.
Do you have to pit?
You have to use both compounds.
So you have to use mediums and softs.
Yes, you have to use mediums and softs.
Well,
So-
then I would. Okay, is the fuel an issue?
Not at all.
So the fuel is not an issue. How long do? I would say with the tire consumption at about 3, I can make the softs last for at least 10, 15 laps. So,
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Okay, I mean, oh yeah, I would say something like that, because, oh yeah, on I run it at about 7, it lasted for 5, 6 laps.
So it might be better to
So,
do mediums,
yeah.
softs.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because you're good on fuel, I guess. You
Yes.
have to. My guess would be, you will have to at least pit once for fuel. I think fuel is, well, refueling once is going to be more than enough. So I would maximize my stints. I would kind of go with softs as much as I can in the opening stages. I would then switch to the mediums for a little bit just to use the compound or whatever you need. And if you need to refuel at
At that
I
point.
would say at that point of the first stop, I would refuel if it makes your strategy viable. But in general, I would pretty much do the stint in the middle on the mediums with as little fuel as possible. So the stints would be divided into like soft, medium, soft. With the
Okay.
first one, that I'm just not sure how much fuel will you have on board. That's the problem.
I mean, I can fuel. I mean, when I do my stops, I'll fuel, and then, like, say the first one, I'll fuel about up to 3/4, and by the time my tires are done, you know, I still have fuel. I mean, fuel's not really an issue for this race, the way I've been practicing it. So,
But yeah, I mean, if fuel is not an issue, your tires, the softs are always going to be faster than the mediums. Even if you have, let's say, about 60 to 70% of the wear, they become kind of equal. But before that, the softs are faster. So
Okay.
if the softs are very, very worn out, they are still kind of equal or on the same level. I wouldn't call it like really the same level. Maybe a little bit slower. A little bit, nothing too much, nothing too crazy, but you need to use that, like, because you want to do as little as possible laps on the mediums, because every lap, for example, here is, let's say 1.5, maybe even 2. I wouldn't call it like 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds slower. So it's, in the long run, it will give you one stop basically, if you need to use both of them. So if you can do like 10, 15 laps, this is going to be about, what can I say, 30 lap race, more or less, 32 laps.
yeah.
So minimize the time on the mediums, and in, let's say, 25 laps, you can really pull out the difference. Like 25 times 1, it's like basically a pit stop.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I mean, it depends on what you want, but I think that's the most viable strategy here. Like, if it's a 1 hour race, so.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, test it out. I'm not responsible for just to mention that. But no, that's what I would try first. That's what I would go
that's
with.
fine. I still have a whole week of practice, so I can put this into practice and see. But I mean, but it does make sense. I mean, the way you explain it, it does make more sense.
I mean, sometimes I'm explaining those things to myself, and in the end, it seems, oh, okay, why am I losing like 10 seconds? Where did I lose 10 seconds? But it seems logical to me right now. So I mean, if you got the time, test it out, and that's the best way to find it out. To really see the potential issues, maybe.
No.
Yeah, I don't know if you got something else.
No, not as far as picking your brain. I mean, I would imagine now it's at that point where I've got to put it into practice, and I'm sure things are going to come up for, before the second session. So I think that's what it is now. It's just put it into practice and see what I can come up with.
Well, yeah, it's usually involves a lot of drivings, but
Yep.
hey, that's what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So. No, I mean, I think we're good for today. Yeah, and there you go. Look at that, 59.50 pretty much. So that's about your hour.
Okay, I mean, a minute or two, but yeah, I mean, if you got questions in the meantime, you can always email me. I'll try to answer as quick as I can. So
sounds good. Oh, hey, will you send me the link so I can send you the payment?
Okay, no worries. I'm gonna send it to you. So yeah, maybe. Okay, I'll try to find it out, but I gotta go literally in like 15, 20 minutes. So maybe later. It's not really a rush for me, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's bad on my end, so don't worry. All right. What can I say? Good luck here. If you got any help, I'm here, and yeah, that's it.
I appreciate it.
Have a nice Saturday.
All right, you do the same thing. You have a nice evening. Appreciate your time.
You too.
Right.
See you next time.
All right, see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, I'm going to be signing off, all right? Thank you for watching.